Hi, and welcome again to our NASET TV program, Inside the Incubator. My name is Kim Ewell, and I am your host, and joining me right next to me is Wei. Now, we're not inside the incubator today. We're actually inside the Flagstaff Business Accelerator, the next step from the incubator, but we're over here. And then over in our Flagstaff incubator is Brett down there. He's the director of the down there, like I'm pointing, like you guys can see at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I'm down at the bottom here.
He's the director of the Coconino Small Business Development Center. And then in the Maricopa incubator is Dan Beach, the executive director. Is that your formal title? Executive director of Maricopa Center for Entrepreneurship. And our boss, the lovely Annette Zinke, who is in a Paradise Bakery somewhere in Phoenix, so if you hear some music popping in, that's what's coming from there.
Every time I unmute, you'll hear music.
There you go.
It's like the angels are singing.
That's sort of what we do. We go where people need us. So sometimes
I think we need the jaunty background music, actually.
Oh, we should. Maybe we could have a soundtrack playing in the background. So today our topic is instant gratification and what I like to call is SOS, or shiny object syndrome, shiny new object syndrome. You can call it whatever you want, but it's often the catalyst for getting us off track or off plan because we're spreading our attention too thin and losing our focus. So today I sort of wanted to get some insights about why it happens and what we can do about it to make sure we're staying on target for our goals. So who wants to give a great definition of what shiny new object syndrome is?
It is the total lack of focus and moving from one project to another and never completing any of them.
I would add to that just getting distracted by something that's new and exciting just about the time that the thing that you're actually starting to make progress on gets difficult.
That's a good one.
So is there...
There's Trish.
Oh, and Trish is joining us from the incubator across. Hi, Trish. Glad you could make it.
Hi.
She was having some computer internet trouble, so it looks like she might be on her phone.
Yep.
You're so... So, do you find that this is a typical problem for entrepreneurs?
I find it's a typical problem for me, but...
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
But yeah, and I would put myself in with entrepreneurs, but yeah, you know, we see it all the time. They come in with one idea and then want to change the next idea, and then something else comes up, and you know, we talked about pivoting and things like that last week, but you can't be in constant pivot mode. You know, it's like their heads on a swivel.
Yeah, and sometimes it pivots. Well, but pivot's got to be within the same business. I mean, I've got clients who come in and they want to go, okay, they've got a business that's totally a service-oriented business, and the next thing they want to open is a food store, and you go, okay, wait, no, get one or the other. You can't do both.
I definitely talk to my clients about sticking to their core business. And what is their core business? And focusing on their core business. And once the core business is up and running, then they can expand. But it is definitely a topic that comes up a lot.
All the time.
So, but okay, so the question becomes though, if they're being attracted to all of these different things, is what they're doing the right thing? Or like, why are they being splintered in so many different directions because they're grasping onto something new?
So I don't actually think that those things are related at all. I think that getting distracted is, well, it's one of the core characteristics for entrepreneurs because they find things so exciting and compelling and they want to do something. And so you get this kind of, I want to do everything as fast as possible. And it doesn't mean that what they're working on isn't the right thing. It just means when it gets hard, a lot of people want to switch to something that's new and exciting and stimulating, and you can kind of get over the drudgery of having to do the hard stuff that's required in actually starting a business. I don't think there's a problem with the thing you're working on just because you get distracted. But I think that you have to put things in place to make sure that you follow through on the stuff that you're, I mean, it's discipline, like anything else in life. You have to have the discipline to follow through even when it's not that fun.
I think a lot of it is
Go
boredom.
ahead.
It's like it's easy to get bored on something. You're working on it. You've been working on it for 6 months, a year. It's not up and running yet, but you're still chasing it. But you're doing the same things over and over again. You're having meetings with potential clients. You're having meetings with potential investors, and you're telling the same story over and over and over again. And at some point, you just get bored with it. It gets to be ordinary. And as an entrepreneur, you're not ordinary. And so I think it's easy to jump to something that's more exciting and starting over versus doing the drudgery of doing it again.
So is instant gratification part of that? Because, I heard from both of you guys that it's hard work, and so when we're on that path of hard work and it gets hard, yeah, we want to be sort of exciting again, right? So is the fact that there is really no instant gratification in business part of the culprit? I feel like we're in an instant gratification type of society now, where everything happens so fast, and when it doesn't happen immediately, we immediately think we're doing something wrong or we need to shift gears.
I'm not sure it's instant gratification more than what Dan and Annette are saying. It's a personality trait of entrepreneurs that we can't take the same thing over and over. That's why we don't work in government jobs or we don't work in a cubicle. It's just too boring for us. So, yeah, we start a business, we get things going. Dan said, yeah, then things become a little monotonous, saying the same pitch over and over, whatever it may be. So I want something new before I finish what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So how do you talk to entrepreneurs and talk them through this to keep them on track?
We often spend a lot of time refocusing or bringing them back to the main point, or there's just a lot of that, okay, that's great, but let's get back to what we were trying to accomplish when we sat down. And that's almost a constant, just kind of, I always feel like we're lassoing them and kind of dragging them back to the general direction they were trying to go into.
Well, and I think actually, if I back up from what Brett just said, because Brett talked a little bit about the how, but the what is really important here too. A lot of entrepreneurs don't have somebody who coaches them like we would coach our clients, and so just getting a coach, just getting somebody that you have to be accountable to. I mean, I can think of a lot of clients that we've worked with in the past that have said, I just need to know, like, I'm going to meet with you on Friday, and if I haven't done what I committed to do last week by Thursday, I can't show up, so I have to do it. And that kind of, maybe it's an outside emphasis on discipline, but discipline's hard. I mean, I am a relatively undisciplined person. I know it's hard, and I still put mechanisms in place to force myself to do what I need to do so that I can do what I want to do. And we do that from the outside for a lot of clients. And so it almost depends on, what thing will work best for them. Whether we use that kind of pressure, or we use reminders, or we use peer pressure, like in the CEO peer group or something. Trish, we can only see your forehead.
Yeah. Trish, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was going to say we can see like the top part of your head, so I think you need to angle it down a little. There we go. So
I make the point to always give my clients what I call homework, and I think that's the challenge to stay on target. Okay, what goals are we setting? Where are we on those goals? All right, what's the next step? Okay, when I see you next time, I expect you to have done these 3 things. So do those 3 things, and then let's come back and talk. And I think that just helps channel them in the direction they need to go, and may help them askew from some of those shiny objects.
So, but do they fall? I guess my question is do they follow the advice? It almost sounds like, with the way Brett described it, that it's almost like a little reluctantly he drags them back in on target or on plan. And what happens if, I mean, even if they stay on plan, isn't their mind sort of somewhere else?
Can be, and that's something like what Netta is saying. It takes the discipline, and what Brett's saying, you have to keep pulling the client back. You have to be that mechanism of discipline for them. And that's one of the key components of being in an incubator. It keeps you disciplined, it keeps you on track, and it covers up the shiny objects when they get
You know, this whole issue reminds me of my early days of consulting, when I met with a potential client who wanted help with communication skills and time management and so on, and I asked what was driving her in thinking that she had those needs. And she talked about these projects that she had started and hadn't finished. And she was talking about how she wasn't able to get her employees on board with the various projects. So I probed a little further to ask, how did you decide on these projects? What kind of a role do they play in helping you build your business? What it boiled down to is she didn't really have a plan or a vision for her business. So I'm inclined to say part of the shiny object syndrome, while I think it is a personality type of thing, but it also goes back to vision. So when you're really clear about your vision and where you want to go, then the shiny objects, you can use a certain amount of discrimination in those shiny objects. And which of those shiny objects are going to help you achieve your vision and which are not.
That is really great. So I want to ask everybody, who suffers from SOS? Anybody besides?
Well, I think we all do, don't we?
And the reason how this topic came about is Brett, Trish, Wei, and I were talking about a client and their shiny object syndrome. And, you know, I feel like, for me, I know that I have somebody I work with that coaches me just personally to stay on my private, you know, on my personal goals and stuff like that, because I get distracted very easily because I feel like ideas are like rabbits in my head. Like I have one and then they just multiply, right? And then I want to do that one and that one and that one. And so that's sort of why I wanted to talk about this. But I feel like for me, when Annette said, you know, that's why coaching is so important, that I found is very valuable to me. Anybody else have any suggestions that was sort of a valuable tool for you to stay focused on something?
I think what Trish is saying is really on point, in that you've got a vision, you know what you're working towards, then you are always working towards something new, to the next goal, and that keeps you, as an entrepreneur, it keeps you interested. And if you're chipping away at things every day, you're moving forward, which continues to keep you interested, and if you're seeing progress, you're still interested. I think it's when you get into some sort of lull, like Dan is saying, and going for money, and you're saying the same pitch 3 times every day, that's when shiny object syndrome kicks in.
So then what do you do to let it not?
Join an incubator to keep it on track.
Well, so I recently implemented a more disciplined mindfulness process, which I think is useful in focusing me, because I have a really bad case of shiny object syndrome. Or I was thinking that we could also call it seeing other squirrels, because we can yell squirrel.
That works too.
Right, exactly. I can make up an acronym for anything. But that, you know, waking up and writing kind of the things that are highest priority, and that it's just a practice, and practice is the key word. Any practice that makes you focus on your biggest priorities for some length of time on a consistent basis is a practice worth maintaining. So it doesn't matter whether it's that or something else. Pick a process that works for you that you can use on a regular basis, preferably daily, and that can help you stay on track. And it doesn't mean I won't get distracted. I always get distracted, but I'm far less distracted when I do this than when I don't.
Is it so much the distraction or the ability or inability to come back onto task?
Distractions are inefficient no matter what. So, I mean, the more I can prevent or delay distraction, the better it is. So, it's not that I don't get distracted. I get distracted mid-sentence. But the more I do this practice, the easier it is for me to get back on track and the less frequently I get distracted in the first place.
I guess I take more of a Kim approach, where I am constantly coming up with new ideas, and some of them are real practical for the moment, and some of those are like, that's a good idea. And I have a parking lot. I just take a great big sheet of white paper, and when a good idea comes by, I just write it down. It may not ever happen. I mean, I have ideas that are 3-4 years old that I will probably never get to. They're good ideas, but I think they help end the distraction by taking your focus away from it. Now I've got it out of my head, I've got it on some paper, and I may come back to it someday, but in the meantime, it's not distracting me for today.
And that was a technique I also learned about this past weekend, was keeping an idea file. And, you know, as you get ideas, you throw them in a file, whether it's a 3x5 file or, you know, manila file or whatever, but throw them in there so you can let go of them, and then, you know, on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis or something like that, pull them out, see whether or not, you know, review them, discard the ones that, you know, are not of value, and if there are some that really speak to you, then see how it fits in.
Yeah, I use Evernote for that, you know, if you do it electronically or doing it on paper. But yeah, it's being able to toss something into the bin that you know won't go away, but you can deal with it later.
Yeah, I have a whole set of rules. I have an idea journal, and I have a whole set of rules around it. Like I put it there, and I can't think about it for 2 weeks, and I can't pull from my idea journal until I've implemented what I'm working on. Because for me, I find that when I have rules, then it makes it easier for me to say, oh, I've already set this up, I can't distract. And I've actually been talking a lot about willpower lately, and it comes to find out that when you pre-commit to these rules, that you actually are not using your willpower then to stay away from the shiny object syndrome. You're actually able to save it for, you know, a bigger crisis or a bigger decision that needs to be made. So yeah, so idea journal for everybody, or file, or parking lot, or whatever. So is shiny object syndrome, is it something that you predict will happen with an entrepreneur?
Experience certainly shown that it's happening.
Generally, yes. Pretty frequent. You know, you have a few very disciplined people that walk in and they're on task and they roll their way through, but for the most part, most people have these things where they want to go off on these tangents.
So with that said, do you have this discussion before it happens?
I have
Yeah, quite often. Kind of, if they come in all scattered, I quite often, especially when they come in scattered, we quite often talk about, you know, getting more focused and getting things less complicated in their head and getting it all written down and then forgetting about some of it so they can focus on what they need to do.
You know, that's why we have
Go ahead.
whiteboards and flip charts and things like that. When somebody comes in and they're scattered, you throw it up on the board and they see for themselves.
That's great. Do they recognize it, though?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of doing a little visual thinking and drawing really badly on a board so you actually see what's going on.
Awesome. Annette? You were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of the follow-on to what Trish said. if you can lay it all out so they can see it, then you can kind of put those things on a timeline so that they don't try to do everything all at once. So you can say these things have to come before those things. These things are, biggest impact if you can accomplish them with the lowest effort. You can prioritize, you can organize by time, and then that visual representation is really important because I think we all see when we write it all down, it was the purpose of business planning, right? Once you write it all down, it seems doable and you realize the things about it that are not. You can see for yourself what's practical and what's not.
I tend to have two types of clients. Either the one that comes in and says, this is what I'm doing, this is the plan to get there, and I help them through it. Or I get the client that comes in, and this is a true story from last week, who started with a solar farm, and then we moved to a landscaping business, and as far as I know, she finally decided on making ornamental welded gates. So, I mean, to me, that's someone.
In one meeting?
That was the first meeting. So if you're that gathered, Brett knows what I'm talking about. I don't see a lot of hope for someone like that unless they can really get it together and stay focused. And hopefully that's why they've come to the SBDC and they set. But it's that personality trait. You either have that focus or you don't. And if you don't, you need help. And that's what we're here for.
So, Wei, I would challenge you a little bit to say, what did you do to help her focus then? Because if she came to you with all of those different ideas, clearly she's excited about a lot of things. How do you help somebody like that?
Well, you talk about what their skills are, and you kind of break it down into into less touchy-feely stuff. So, what can they really do? What's feasible? What has the really largest market to get them to where they want to be? But it really, I think, at the end of the day, it comes down to just talking and figuring out what they really want to do. And what I say that they finally I think they've decided to go with the gates. That actually came from another meeting after they had time to kind of distill in their own head. But a lot of what we do is really just talking people through what they probably already know, but they just need a sounding board and someone to give them a little bit of direction.
One of the tools that Trish and I are working on, I guess tentatively called an idea validator, sort of fits with this. It's okay, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? And what's the solution to that problem? Who are the customers going to kind of be? Who are the competitors? What's your competitive advantage? And the big one, how are you going to make money at this? I think as you work the client through some of these questions and answers, they start realizing those things. Okay, this is a great idea. There's no money in it. This is a great idea, but there's no customers. Or this is a great idea, but there's no problem to solve. It's just a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no problem to solve, it's not a great idea.
Exactly. And that's part of what the tool helps them with. So it's like I think we're still in incubation with the tool, but I think it's starting to solve those problems as I'm using it.
So here's a little bit of a different take on the seeing more squirrel or seeing other squirrels or shiny object syndrome. So we've been talking about the whole idea as being a distraction, but what about with someone who's pretty focused on their business plan, but they're getting distracted by all the shiny new tools that they can bring into their business and the money that takes? Because I think a lot of times when people are struggling, it's not that they necessarily want a different idea. Maybe they want to make it easier, or they want something and they're going from tool to tool to tool. You guys, does that make sense? And
yeah.
We may or may not have someone on our team who tries out a lot of different tools.
Well,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I saw you laugh when she started saying that.
and Brett, I say this because this is another thing of mine, right, too? I mean,
yeah.
How many times do I send an email? Can I buy this? Can I buy that? I do trials. So how do we get, how do we talk them through that process? Because I know with a creative, you're always looking for a way to simplify your processes, streamline things, make it easier, make it faster, make it whatever. How do we walk them through that?
How do you keep your eye on the goal? So make sure you don't lose sight of the goal that you're trying to accomplish and the vision that you have. And if you can keep that, if the tool you're trying out has a high likelihood of getting you closer to your goal or getting you there faster, then it may be worth trying. But if it may just be a different way, I'm not sure that I see the benefit to that.
Yeah, you got to set some criteria to say it's got to at least save us so much time or so much money or make us much more effective. And then if you do decide that, then you really have to truly commit to adopting it and utilizing it. And so that is, and having tried out 12 billion tools on everything that there probably is out there, I have found ways to settle in and actually use certain ones. But it's not easy if you're trying to find, but you'll never find that perfect solution. You have to find that it does what I need it to do, and we can get everybody to use it, and we can go on and actually run the business.
Yeah, in your defense, I would say somebody has to test all those tools, so thank goodness you have the patience to test them.
Trish, you were going to say something?
Well, yeah, I'm going to challenge that looking at all of those tools and changing up all the time isn't necessarily driven by efficiencies or effectiveness or anything like that. I mean, maybe when you settle on one, it is, but quite honestly, I think some people, when it comes to technology, are lured in by the sexiness of the technology, or somebody might say, oh yeah, I use this and it's great, and we're looking for that great experience as well. So I think that there's a certain amount of that driving the shiny objects.
I 100% agree. I am guilty, 100% guilty as well. I am always looking for things to make me more efficient and my processes more efficient. But I do find that sometimes I get really distracted on the latest new tool because I like adopting things early. I'm not going to lie. So I guess the problem, or the question I guess becomes, how do you coach somebody into staying on path and not letting them get distracted with something that they say might make them more efficient?
Is that what MVP is all about? A version of it? We have clients who want to build the product with all of the bells and whistles on it. Is this sort of the same kind of idea? I want to keep trying out new technologies, really all about the bells and whistles, and really what I need to be focusing on, what's the minimum product that will get me through the process and get me the results. Yes, there may be something better, there may be something shinier, but let's just get the product out there, let's get in production, in revenue, before we worry about the next shiny tool.
Yeah. So Brett, I have a question directly for you because you're an idea person and you tried out 12,000 tools. Do you ever get to the point where you just want to create something that does solve everything?
I have gotten there, but I realized what that kind of undertaking is, and that it's kind of like jousting with windmills type of deal. You're never gonna win that battle. There's never gonna be the perfect tool. There is a point where you just have to kind of find what can work for you, unless you really, really want to start that company and create that ultimate tool, and you feel you really have the way to do that. But the tools are all different because we all look at things differently, we all utilize things differently, we all go about things differently, and so tools that speak to me might not speak to you. So I've thought about it, but no, I don't want to go there.
Any final thoughts on shiny object syndrome?
When you see shiny objects and they make you want to do something, you should show up at one of our sites and ask for help.
Well said. Anybody else?
I have to agree with Annette. Incubator SBDC can really help you stay focused and get to success.
Okay,
Ditto.
well, go ahead.
She said ditto.
Oh, ditto.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, well, that about does it for us. We are out of time. I want to thank you guys for joining me today inside the incubator, and we'll be back next week, Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. And if you are a fan of ours on Facebook, we are going to be doing, well, not we, Annette will be doing a live Facebook tour of the accelerator tomorrow. So for those of you that haven't seen it, make sure your notifications are set to receive notifications, and you'll get a little notification that we're going live. So we'll see you live tomorrow and back here again next week. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye.